vielleicht nur aus dem Vorstand.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Race to Power. I am Molly Gambhir. There is a lot lined up for you from the world of elections and politics. In the United States, Donald Trump has scored a win in the Congress after senators voted to block the Democrats from overturning Trump's tariff decisions. On to South Korea, which is in the thick of political crisis as the opposition leader the not guilty verdict has been overturned by the Supreme Court, putting his presidential bid in jeopardy. All this and more coming up. And our top focus, President Donald Trump's tariff war has divided the U.S. Senate. On Wednesday, in fact, Republican lawmakers managed to block a resolution from Democrats to overturn the reciprocal tariffs. Listen to this.
We've got the yeas 49, the nays 49. The joint resolution fails passage. The majority leader.
Mr. President.
And this is the second tariff-related bill that reached the Senate table after Trump's tariff announcement last month. The tie vote on Wednesday successfully blocked an attempt to overturn Trump's tariffs, giving the U.S. president a congressional win despite Republican lawmakers also being wary of the implications of reciprocal tariffs. And ahead of the vote, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance quoted Republican lawmakers to assure the leaders that the Trump administration continues to make progress on trade negotiations with many countries. Many Republicans have called the vote a political stunt by the Democrats, while the blue camp says that Republicans backing Trump's trade war will have dire consequences. And the divide over Donald Trump's tariff war has only increased in the past month, while the U.S. president continues to defend his decision for the good of the American economy and long-term positive impact. Many critics and trade analysts are worried the back and forth over reciprocal tariff rates will push the American economy into recession, ultimately forcing citizens to bear the brunt of Trump's decisions. And that's just a sample of what the consequences look like as far as Donald Trump's tariff war is concerned in the aftermath of what happened in the United States. The concerns have been on the rise on the ground as well, and within the sectors that have been closely monitoring the impact in the aftermath of Donald Trump's tariff storm. I'm going straight across now to our correspondent, Susan Tehrani, who's been tracking those developments very closely. Hi, Susan. Let me begin by asking you for your assessment of where things stand right now and what the mood on the ground really is.
Yeah, so it was a tie, as you mentioned, 49 to 49. That's why this bill didn't pass. It just really shows even a small majority in the Senate and the House, really how Trump's agenda is being helped, any party really. You had Rand Paul, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins, three Republicans who sided with the Democrats in hoping to pass this bill where the president would need congressional approval for the tariffs. That didn't happen. And so the president's policies are going to continue. But it also really signifies not only a win for President Trump, but also this sort of, I mean, although it's minor, Molly, there's a little bit of an infighting about President Trump's economic policies and the tariffs within the Republican Party. And ultimately, while his cabinet is completely on his side, lawmakers in Washington, some of them are concerned about their constituents and how these tariffs may or may not affect them.
Right. Stay with us, Susan. Let's also get our viewers up to speed with the latest on how U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth spoke over the phone with his Indian counterpart Rajnath Singh, and the phone call, of course, coming after the U.S. urged India and Pakistan to work together to de-escalate tensions. And earlier, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke with his Indian counterpart, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. Going back across now to Susan, who's been monitoring those developments. Susan, a quick check on the latest on that front.
Right. So the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth here in the United States did speak with his Indian counterpart. He expressed his sympathy and condolences for the loss of innocent lives at that brutal Pahalgam terrorist attack carried out by Pakistani terrorists. During the conversation, the Indian defense minister told the U.S. Secretary of Defense that Pakistan has a history of supporting, training, and funding terrorist organizations, and that Pakistan has been exposed as a rogue state fueling global terrorism and destabilizing the region, and that the world cannot tolerate this any longer. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, for his part, expressed the full support of the U.S. government in India's fight against terrorism. He said the U.S. stands in solidarity with India and supports India's right to defend himself. India's defense minister, as I mentioned earlier, this conversation with Pete Hegseth just happened a few hours ago.
Right, Susan, thanks for those updates for now, but we're not letting you go as we continue to track the latest coming in. As far as Elon Musk is concerned, the Tesla chair, in fact, has denied a Wall Street Journal report that claimed that Tesla is looking to find a replacement for CEO Elon Musk. The report said Tesla board members had reached out to executive search firms to find a new replacement for Musk. Now, this comes after a 71% drop in profits at Tesla and opponents shunning the electric vehicle company. But Denholm has said on social media platform X that the report is quote-unquote absolutely false, adding that the EV maker's board is highly confident in Musk's ability. Musk also said on X that the report was a deliberately false article. Last week, Musk said he would cut back significantly on the time that he devotes to the Trump administration and spend more time running Tesla. Remember, his work at the Department of Government Efficiency has been among the most controversial aspects of the Trump presidency, and his time away from Tesla has been an additional concern for investors as sales of its aging EV lineup have been on the decline. The Wall Street Journal report said that the board members met Musk and asked him to acknowledge publicly that he would spend more time at Tesla. It's unclear whether Musk's pledge to spend more time at Tesla has affected the board's efforts towards succession planning. The White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, meanwhile, has reportedly said that Musk is no longer based at the White House complex and mainly stays in touch over the phone. Wiles said it is not making much of a difference work-wise, but Musk is not physically present as much as he was. She, however, stressed that he's not out of it altogether. And let's go back across to Susan Teherani. Susan, from the time that Musk became a part of the Department of Government Efficiency to now, a lot has happened. But what lies ahead at this point for him, given Tesla and the sentiment with the Department of Government Efficiency also facing those string of controversies?
Yeah, that's a really valid question. But Molly, I do want to say that it appears, and I don't see this really in a lot of reports, it appears that the reason Elon Musk is setting back and the White House is so concerned about getting the message out that Elon Musk is out of the White House, he's not in there all the time, is because he was hired as a special government contractor. As a special government contractor, your days are numbered for 180 days. After that, you have to disclose your finances. There are conflict of interest issues. And really, the government goes into your nitty-gritty of your life and tries to extract things to make sure that, all is well. Perhaps the main reason that Elon Musk wanted to pull back of government is because he didn't want that kind of scrutiny. And I think the White House, to a certain extent, is protecting him for that. It doesn't appear that Elon Musk or the Trump administration, President Trump himself, are the kind of people that would back down because of a little controversy here and there. If Elon Musk, I believe, could have stayed there as a special government contractor, he'd be all over the White House. But I think it's because of those financial disclosures, because he has to disclose information about his private life ultimately to continue this work at the helm and be in government, is the reason he stepped back. And of course, I'm sure there is a lot of truth to the fact that he wants to focus on his personal endeavors as well.
All right, we're leaving it there for the moment. Susan, thanks very much for all those updates. All right, shifting focus now to Australians who are voting to elect a new Prime Minister, and with the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton as the two frontrunners for the top job, let's just take a look at what the concerns really are as far as the minds of Australians are concerned, what's on top of their minds. Sky-high inflation, along with rising costs of living, also the energy transition and ties with China. These are key topics in this election. Inflation, for that matter, is biting off a sizable chunk of consumer budgets. Eggs and beer are costlier than ever before, and while owning a house is a mere dream for many, rising rents are making it difficult to make ends meet for others. Both Labour and Liberals have put out different plans to fix the housing crisis, and the Labour Party wants to build 1.2 million homes and has promised policy changes to help first-time buyers, while Liberals want to slash immigration and unlock retirement savings for down payments. And after inflation and cost of living comes Australia's largest trading partner and biggest strategic threat in a way, China. Both parties vouching for a different approach towards Beijing, while Albanese has removed trade barriers and improved diplomatic ties with Beijing. On the other hand, Dutton vows a strong stance against China. And there's also the net zero goal by 2050, another crucial issue. There is consensus on reaching net zero carbon emission, with Labour Party under Albanese seeking a grid powered by renewable energy. The coalition is pitching nuclear power to achieve the net zero target.
Australians voted general elections on Saturday after a campaign that has been dominated by the soaring costs of living, the economy, energy and China. Affordable housing is in short supply, interest rates remain high, and the major parties are starkly divided on how to wean the nation off fossil fuels. The major parties are also divided on how to deal with China, which is at once Australia's largest trading partner and its greatest strategic threat.
Moving on for now to South Korea, just ahead of the June 3rd presidential election, the country's fast-changing political landscape is keeping the voters guessing amid a slew of legal challenges, resignations, and also emerging candidates. And the country's main opposition party candidate, Lee Jae-myung, is caught in a legal crisis, with South Korea's apex court overturning his previous acquittal in an election violation law case. The court has ordered a fresh trial, in fact, in which a conviction for Lee could result in a 5-year ban from contesting elections. Meanwhile, uncertainty is looming on the other side of the political spectrum, acting president resigning just after the Supreme Court ruled against the Democratic Party nominee, Lee Jae-myung.
저는 이제
A short while ago, I tendered my resignation as Prime Minister and Acting President. Two paths lay before me. One is to carry on in my current role. The other is to step down and take on a greater responsibility.
완수하는 길.
And hours after Han's resignation, the finance minister also resigned just before the National Assembly reported a motion to impeach him. The impeachment motion, Choi is accused of delaying the appointment of the 9th Justice to the Constitutional Court during his time as acting president, and former President Yoon's People's Power Party is yet to nominate a presidential candidate. The dynamics of conservative primaries will shift if Han also throws his hat in the race. Conservative primaries are already in their final stages, with Kim Moon-soo and Han Dong-hoon emerging as the frontrunners. If Han Duck-soo enters the race, the Conservative Party will basically have to choose between allowing him a late entry in the primaries or nominating him as a consensus candidate. Already trailing behind in the opinion polls, the Conservative vote risks getting divided further if Han goes alone. Snap elections were triggered in South Korea after the Constitutional Court upheld Yoon's impeachment. Yoon is a bystander in this election, but the legal net is coming in on him. Apart from the charges of insurrection, Yoon has been indicted on an additional charge of abuse of power over his brief declaration of martial law in early December. And around the world, workers marked International Workers' Day, raising their voices for fair wages, respect for rights, and social justice. From Argentina to South Korea, Turkey to Nepal, the demands may differ, but the spirit remains the same: dignity and protection for every worker. In Buenos Aires, Argentina's main labor unions hit the streets on International Workers' Day, stridently criticizing the president's austerity policies. Protesters waved flags bearing the image of late Pope Francis, paying tribute to his legacy and calling for compassionate governance. With the minimum wage stuck at just $250 and failed talks for an increase, frustration is at fever pitch. While Millie claims 2,000 structural reforms and promises growth is next, the worker unions are not buying it.
It cannot be that the workers are the adjustment variable of a government that directs the entire crisis towards us so well. Today we are back on the streets, and we hope to now go out looking for continuity with 36 hours strike.
In Seoul, the workers rallied under the banner of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions. The leader, Yang Kyung-soo, declared it a movement for union rights and social justice, calling out the government while pushing for stronger labor protections across the board. Tensions reached the streets of Turkey as the police clashed with May Day protesters trying to reach Taksim Square, a symbolic and now banned ground for demonstrations. The protesters were forcibly detained as unions and civil society groups raised the pitch for workers' rights and justice. And in Kathmandu, Nepal, thousands rallied peacefully in a show of worker solidarity. Year 2025 marks the 136th May Day in Nepal, a national holiday where workers from all walks of life join in the call for fair wages, protections, as well as equality. On to Bangladesh now. A 3-day wave of political rallies has started in the country. Rival groups are flooding the capital as the country awaits fresh elections after the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was deposed last year, and Mohammad Yunus is heading the interim government. He took charge after Prime Minister Hasina fled into exile in last August. Yunus says elections will be held by December this year or by mid-2026 at the latest. The BNP, widely seen as the frontrunner, is holding a massive May Day rally. The Jamaat-e-Islami and the Jatiya party are also taking to the streets for the Jatiya. This is the first outdoor event since their offices were vandalized in October, allegedly for backing Hasina. And on Friday, the National Citizens Party, formed by student leaders of last year's protests, will stage a rally. Its leader initially joined the Yunus cabinet and then quit to form the NCP. The party is expecting a crowd of up to 30,000 people. On Saturday, the Hifazat-e-Islam is holding a grand rally to demand scrapping the reforms proposed by the Women's Commission. The group says it will continue to protest regardless of who leads the government. Bangladesh last held elections in January 2024. Yunus says the caretaker government will deliver democratic reforms before taking the country to the polls. Elections could be held early or later, depending on political consensus. And we're taking you to Kenya now, where a lawmaker has been shot dead on the busy streets of the Kenyan capital. The incident took place on Wednesday night. An unknown assailant shot dead the parliament member, Charles Ongondo, when his car stopped at a red light. The unidentified gunman fled the scene on a motorbike. Around 7:30 p.m. local time, he represents the Kenya western area of Kasipul, attended a parliament session earlier in the day, in fact. Kenya's police officials say the murder appears to be premeditated and targeted, and according to reports, 2 gunmen are involved. The lawmaker's driver survived the shooting. He was shot at close range and pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital.
We would want to register our deepest condolences to what has taken place. I want to confirm and inform the residents of the entire Homa Bay County and Kenya. Honorable Ongondo was with us in Parliament, as been stated, and he closely had a serious or close discussion with Honorable Ivo Bara, as I saw. I passed Honorable Ongondo around 7 in the night at Parliament exit as he was addressing 5 MPs, and he was the one whom the MPs were listening to.
He was a member of the opposition party that is headed by Raila Odinga. Shifting focus for now, Singapore is brimming with political activity as the party leaders intensify their poll campaign ahead of the elections on May 3rd. And Singapore's Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong, was seen at a rally at a public housing estate. While the ruling People's Action Party has maintained its power since 1959, the election this time is witnessing growing calls for diversity in the parliament. The opposition party, in fact, is also leaving no stone unturned, and thousands are showing up at its campaigns. One of the reasons for that is that political rallies are returning to the island after a 10-year pause. And ahead of the key election on Saturday, here's what some of the voters had to say.
And so I think this is a turning point in kind of Singapore politics, because what you are seeing is that you have a lot of new voters, such as myself, and we are people that, you know, I would say that our generation, we tend to shape our own opinions, and also we have our own thoughts and different concerns that we have regarding Singapore, especially in a geopolitical context.
The election on May 3rd is being touted as a crucial one for several reasons. While the cost of living and housing issues are prominent this time, the looming uncertainty around the US tariffs has also become a key electoral issue for the voters. Trump levied only 10% reciprocal tariff on Singapore. However, changing trade dynamics the world over and its impact on Singapore has become an important part of the discourse. And here's a quick look at some of the other stories that are making headlines from around the world. Major political groups are scrambling to form a coalition in the Cayman Islands after an inconclusive election result. Despite securing the largest number of seats with 7 candidates, the PPM is 3 short of a majority, and independents in the eastern districts are likely to be the kingmakers. Ahead of the October presidential and parliamentary elections in Tanzania, the opposition Chadema party has announced it will take legal action over a crackdown on its members. The party says it will file cases in international humanitarian courts in Africa and around the world over inhumane actions committed against its leaders and supporters. Earlier this month, in her first major speech since losing the US presidential election, Kamala Harris singled out the Trump administration's handling of the economy and immigration policy. Harris called on Americans to unite against Trump and what she called, quote-unquote, the greatest man-made economic crisis in modern presidential history. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Race to Power. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. We're taking a very short break. Stay with us.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
This week on the West Asia Post, deadly sectarian clashes have erupted in Syria. The Druze community finds itself at a crossroads, confronting an Islamist government as Israel threatens to unleash its firepower on Damascus. Also on the show, we talk about the port blast that shook Iran's key shipping hub, and Turkey's secret bases in Iraq.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, only on WION World is One.
As celebrities gear up for Met Gala 2025, we list out the best